Hello, my name is Jerpy Eflin, and today I'll be giving an intro on HP Share Chandelure, or rather, support Chandelure. Um, so these are the three items you do want to run. Um, Slick Spoon and White Glasses were the core for Chandelure. Third item, some people like going choice specs, some people like going energy amp, and some people like running focus band. I rather would run XP share. There are three main reasons why Chandelure. I like running Chandelure support, and reason number one is my main inspiration, which is League of Legends. Honestly, if those are if some of y'all are in the know, there are overall mons that are not highlighted as supports. So these are like carries, right? These are carries that you run in the mid lane or in the top lane. They've been ran as supports, and not only um, have these picks been played as supports, they've also been meta supports. They have dictated their respective portion of the game, and I take inspiration from that. That's not necessarily what Chandelure could be, but it could get there. It could get there. Honestly, side tangent. Xfisher SPNIC or Xfisher Zero Aura or Xfisher Zork. Not Zork. Zacian. Zero Aura Zacian. Those other three may have potential as well. So yeah, just League of Legends main inspiration. Carries can be played as supports. Reason number two. This mon scales very well, and the reason for that, you gotta think its utility. Um, and I'll get to. Honestly, I have a couple more reasons, right? Pre-5 isn't that bad. That's another reason. But it scales well because it does a lot of damage that also you get shred off from your infiltrator. So whenever you deal damage to opposing Pokemon, you get to shred some of their special defense. And that's pretty huge because you rip apart tanks, and its basic damage is enough to rip apart squishes already. So, um, yeah, that's another reason. Like, it is a support that can deal damage, but I'll elaborate that later. But highlighting the fact that it deals a lot of damage contributes to the fact that it scales well. Um, Alongside Chandelure's damage, you also have their utilities through Poltergeist, which is actually the main move I want to run in the general field. Um, its utility scales pretty well. With Poltergeist, it's a huge AoE zoning tool, and you set up your opponents through. It's low, and you can potentially play make with setting up a Poltergeist, and you can do that pretty easily with the amount of area it covers, or you can peel for your front line or for your back line, play a more reactive comp. So yeah, Poltergeist is pretty good, and this max range is also pretty good. And the honestly, Poltergeist, it also outranges Overheat. Fun fact, but Poltergeist makes matchups where the enemy comps also have mid-range mages. It makes that matchup a lot more comfortable because you're able to Poltergeists have above average range, and you can use that to effect alongside the amount of area it covers. So yeah, that's cool. As for Imprison, this used to be the go-to move. Reason why I moved away from it now is because even though it's an AoE silence and you get a 0.5 stun from the person you contact initially with Imprison, it doesn't into the general matchups you run into a lot more range centric carries such as maybe Espeon, maybe A9, but definitely into Mew and Inteleon and Venusaur, maybe some ADCs if that become popular again. Poltergeist does well, and it also does well into compositions where you also have like, if you can, like, Chandelure does struggle somewhat against Dive in sense of you will get blown up. But if you think Poltergeist is enough, then you could also run it to that as well, and you also have a winning matchup into um, your poke heavy comps. Um, and Prison doesn't do that. It's very narrow. Um, I probably should do a side by side and not make this claim, but Imprison does feel like it has like sort of max range than Poltergeist, so you're not able to impact as much instead of AoE, and you're not able to reach out to potentially these mid-range mages and mid-range carriers. Um, and yeah, like even though you have a lot of rewards landing in Imprison with the silence and that's done, you like getting to that point is hard. And when you're in a solo queue environment where you want to have much leverage, much agency to the matchup, you kind of want to have a move that can also set up for your opponents, and but also have an easier time doing it, and alongside having an easier time in doing it and being able to set up your opponents, but cover a lot of area and cover a lot of the setting of a team fight. So yeah, kind of why I move away from Imprison. But if you do run into matchups where Blue Bear is honestly like, if I haven't faced good teams, but if there are not team compositions where Blue Bear, it is popular by the way, but Blue Bear is ran, or you got your Zorax. Imprison does that really well. You stop their uptime with your stuns, and they're not able to get out because they're silenced as well. A good thing with both of these moves, they can hit a front line, and you're able to punish them with being followed up from overheat. So just throwing a poltergeist on other than like punishing engagements, you can also throw out Imprison as a way of creating progress because it's ranged. So you just throw out a poltergeist or Imprison, and you just start ripping apart front line or whatever target you have with the overheat. Last amazing move that helps Chandelure scale pretty well is the blind from the Unite. The blind is the bigger part of the Unite, and there's a lot of theoretical nuances with Unite rather than strictly what the move does in the game. But all I can say is that, like, for sure, this move does apply blind, and that's where a lot of like theoretical stuff comes. But at the very least, with the blind, you're not able to see what your opponents do within like until you get into like some sort of radius, right? But it's like pretty short. But essentially, you're not able to see what your opponents do, and with that, you start expecting a lot of people more. That's why they start retreating, or they're like a lot of answering back is not coordinated. So with that blind, you're able to make plays that you can't get away with, because the plays you can't get away with is because it's getting punished by opponents that are expecting it. So with that blind and with those opponents not being able to see those plays happen, you can make those plays. And yeah, this creates a very chaotic environment, and our teammates can take advantage of that, right? So yeah, it's a very good move. Of course, with the more against the more experienced players, like these blinds have counterplay. As long as there's one opponent with a little blind, they're able to coordinate with the team, and with team synergy, right, with team dynamics, they're able to punish these blinds. But like against like lower to mid level players, blind will be pretty effective. It is a hard CC to have counterplay against, and it requires a lot of teamwork and coordination and yada yada, being redundant. So, anyways, then there's reason number 2, right? You just scale really well. Reason number 3, um, it is a support that can deal damage, right? And though its ways of dealing damage is kind of what I want to get to. Reason number 4, is especially when you run a top lane, but because of your damage, it's a very good macro tool. But that's like a later part of the game. I do want to explain how Ember, how I like using Ember at pre-5. Actually, I will elaborate that later. But because there's another reason. Like, even though like it is a scaling mon, another reason why I do like running it is pre-5 is actually not that bad. But I'll elaborate that later. So anyways, about Chandelure dealing damage, it's able to have a sort of line of play to where you're the one creating progress through poking your opponents out and creating kill pressure. And not a lot of people do it, but it has been seen a few months ago with like Eldegoss and Hoopa finally auto attacking and wearing people down. Potentially with a red buff, like slowing them down, or like you got your max HP percentage procs from your multiple band. So yeah, just creating kill pressure. And Ember can do that. And what's cool about like these ranged briefs is like a lot of these kill pressure you get it for free because you're ranged, and a lot of the matchups on top lane, unless you're an enchanter, is more short range or melee oriented. So you could literally just throw out Ember and get away with it. Yeah, or throw out a boosted auto and get away with it. And then yeah, like I have highlighted it before that overheat does deal a lot of damage, but like with a lot of damage, it becomes a very good macro tool. Like kind of weird way to highlight overheat. I'm aware, but like with Eldegoss or with these Hoopa, like your ripping apart birds are a lot slower. But with overheat, especially with the fact it's in AOE, you're able to rip apart these birds, and you're able to have less time ripping apart objectives and have more time doing things such as rotating to a lane and creating pressure, trying to take advantage of your lead at a certain moment of your heat. It's not just a good micro tool, but a good macro tool in that sense. And the last thing, last sub reason number 3 of dealing damage is like in solo queue, like you kind of feel bad that you don't deal damage, and because like sometimes you're aware that hey, people are walking up, but you can't really punish it other than throwing out autos or throwing out whatever damaging tool that honestly feels like a wet noodle, right? With Chandelure, like you could have Sloper walk up and they have to not start respecting you because you're throwing out all these overheats, all 3 of your overheats into your final hit, and they chunk down that 1/3, and they don't have as much leeway. If they walk up again without as much heals, they'll get punished, and we snowball from there. And yeah, with like the damage, you're able to punish bad frontliners, which is pretty cool. Also to highlight with again with like damaging tools being a good like a good macro tool. You also have an avenue of ripping apart like objectives and also ripping apart people. So like it's a good balance, right? That's what's pretty cool about Chandelure, being able to still damage even though you're running Expedition as a third item. Reason number 4, its laning is pretty good. Pre-5 is pretty good. But that's the main reason. Pre-5 is pretty good. And so, like, theoretically, you're not getting punished for running a mon that's weak pretty early. You're running a mon that's decent from 1 to 4, like okay, like above like average, like you're getting to a point where like you can cast both AoE stuns and deal a lot of damage into a late game monster. So for me, I don't see um running Chandelure as a losing situation. Um, but yeah, like its pre-5 is not that bad. Um, you have your Ember, right? Like I said before, you're creating co-pressure, getting free hits in, or like you're creating a timer from, um, or you can make it to where like you throw your autos first on the creep, and you make that creep. You're able to leash that creep in, or you're, just basically rip people apart. And what's cool about like Ember and like your boosted autos is that um they're DLTs, right? They're damage over times, and with damage over time, you're able to stop a lot of scoring attempts, which is very popular in the top lane. So, just a lot of good utility. Just like you're able to um, poke people out. You're able to create timers of when the mod is about to get secured, or you can make or P5 Chandelure is able to stop a lot of scoring attempts. It's a very good anti-scoring Pokemon. So, aside from Ember and his basic autos, you also have Nightshade. Very underrated, very very underrated move. Yeah, so Nightshade. Typically with like a lot of mons right now that are P4, you don't have a lot of avenues of creating or like applying CC to 2 or more mons. Nightshade is able to do that, and you can do that at a safe distance. And what I like about like with my playstyle, I typically like having CC around. So you could use CC to set up for your opponents, or you're peeling for them, or you're giving them safety, or enabling opponents for once again for place. And Nightshade is able to do that. So I find that to be pretty cool. Like it could be a situation where you're at 750, 850. Yeah, 850. You're at 850 birds, and you have your jungler rotating up to top lane, and you can create a huge lead from like the highest cap. Well, highest cap is like killing all three, right? You the jungler and the 2 lane mons, but realistically, the average, or not the average, the above average is pretty good. Getting the average of getting rid of mons, that's like above average already, and that's pretty good. And it's like not hard to get there because Nightshade is not only range and like at an appropriate max range, but it's also AoE. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Like the dots, the poke, Nightshade. I find that to be a pretty good pre-5 mon, and like sure like Litwick is it's a pretty fail, and like you don't do a lot of damage, but it's damage that's like frustrating. And I hope Slashcan is watching this because he plays Brawl Stars. I do too. If you guys are familiar with like the side laner named Crow, he also has like a familiar playstyle where his damage are dots, but also like with these dots they apply like damage reduction debuffs, which is like kind of like the supporting playstyle. But also like those poisons, even though like they're not like the initial hits are like not as worrying, like they add up over time, and that's pressure that's applied throughout the game with its appropriate amount of range and all that. And I see that in Chandelure. Anyways, these are the items once again, and I do run it with Flash. So let's get into practice mode and try to explain myself. But yeah, like Chandelure, I do want to preface it. You kind of play XP share Chandelure like you would without XP share. So, and a lot of good lane partners are ones that are more bulkier. which are a lot of these spawns, and you can still work with like a Dodrio or Zora. Don't get me wrong. Probably Zora is like your weakest top lane carry because you really need to get your 5, and you're also Litwick. Like even though I have praised as pre-5, it's not as much to where you can take a lot of withstand a lot of interactions if you're losing, and people will take advantage of that. You're both of y'all are weak, and they win lane power like instantly. You know, like it's gonna take a long time for Zora to get 5, and it's gonna take a long time for me to get to my appropriate power spikes. And at that point, like top lane's already lost, and I'm rotating to bot to try to create a lead, a more winning lead there. But anyways, yeah, just throwing out these, like, I don't think these are as complicated. You're pretty standard, right? I'll just skip this. Like, just figure it out yourselves. Yeah, and like I think I've said this when we're putting up the game, but you do want to play Experience Chandelure like how you would already just like have your opponent's front line for you, and you just stand under range, and you just throwing out all these like dots, and you're mostly playing to secure, right? What if your opponents are very aware of how to leash, like you can have a situation where you leash up your birds up here and you throw out your nightshade, you give them a stun, and they stick around a bit longer into your side of the map. And if they walk up, you probably have the situation where you can punish their walking up and snowball from there. So yeah, just like pretty standard. Just poking people out, get a feel for them. Just you're not really like you don't have to deal damage. You just have to walk up, and you're baiting people out. You're standing outside the bubble, outside of the bubble where they could actually hit you. You're just standing outside of it, walking in, walk back, and you see how people react, right? And if you have played Smash Bros, you kind of understand like how that works, because you're always like trying to figure out what your opponents want to do and all that. So yeah, you just play your standard range carry, poking people out, and that's your late game. And like once you get to minute 7, that's when you start deviating away from your laning phase, and that's when a lot more team fights happen, other than like a potential gank from top or all that. So by level 7, you're either level 6 or you're level 7, and into team fights. So let's say you run Poltergeist, right? And I do want to preface this with like Chandelure. Chandelure is, you can't do everything by yourself. You do want a more bulkier mon to create engagements for you. You are a reactive mon. You're a mon that does follow up rather than having engagements yourself. You can't really flash into like engagements and be in the thick of battle taking hits. No, you have to stand back, and if you see an engagement and see like CC, you can potentially follow up with a Poltergeist or Overheat. But even if I have said that, like you have ways to slowly create progress, and one of which you can do that. Your main tools, rather, of doing that is through Poltergeist. And if you pay attention to Poltergeist, look at the amount of area discovers, right? That's probably like the coolest part of Poltergeist, like its AoE and the fact that it can reach that far. So yeah, like if you want to try to create like some sort of progress, you can throw out Poltergeist at max range, and it is also your safety net, so you can walk up, and if they start walking in, they start running into chairs and all that, and they start getting slow, so you start walking back, potentially throw out an overheat to punish their positioning, and with all these slows, they might even get caught out, get pegged, and get murked. So yeah, that's the cool part about Poltergeist. And with this like reactive archetype, if you see them walk up, right, you start throwing out your overheats at max range, maybe being able to hit with your final hit of your unite. So yeah, that's cool. I haven't touched too much about overheat, but I've kind of highlighted why I did like overheat. With its macro tools and being able to punish people. Same way with unite as you would with overheat. You want to use your blind to punish engagements, but there is a line of play where you can walk up to people. You can walk up to people, flash unite, and typically you want to go for that line of play if you have someone like, or you have a melee carry that's rotating in, and you want to create more ambiguity, so you just flash in ult, throw your poltergeist, and then this is your suicide play, but it's a good enough play to where like if you hit like probably like 2 to 4, like 2 is like good, 3 is like amazing, and like, you know, just it scales the more people you hit, right, with your utilities. But like just throw your blind, you throw your slow. They feel they're limited in how they can punish because of the blind and because of the slow, or because of the silence and the AoE stun from imprison. They're a lot more limited. So, oh goodness. So you can definitely create a chaos and create like a huge momentum to a point where even though you die, you're in a more winning situation because your play your sacrifice and play have created 2 or more picks, right? Maybe 1, but in a winning situation. But yeah, like that's like the extraordinary line of play. You don't necessarily have to do that. Typically, if your opponents walk up too much, you can just blind them into. What's cool with the blind, you can also create a lot of like what is it? Limiting. You can disrupt your opponents even more because like you're not expecting imprison, right? You throw out your prison and now they can't flash either. And they truly feel like they can't do anything. They're blinded, so they don't know what to expect, and they're imprisoned, they're silenced and stunned, and so like they also feel like they can't do anything at all, you know. So same with poltergeist, but yeah, like those are things that you want to do with Unite and all that. And
the final stretch.
Yeah, I haven't touched on this.
You're in trouble.
Like oh fuck. Actually, I should reset everything. Like I have highlighted before, like since you're at the top lane, like scores are like very rampant, and so you do wanna, if you wanna stop these attempts, you can throw out your embers and your boosted autos, embers into Nightshade and prolong, and waste your time. And I don't think I have. I haven't said this, but like if you're in a situation during the laning phase, pre-7, if you're in a situation where you're like even, the fact that you're scaling makes the fact that you're playing the situation is even situation where it's all stainless, where you have all pads up and both the opponents are doing the fine. If you're in a situation, it's actually winning because you're scaling anyways, right? There are more nuances, right? Like maybe like there's a lot more. They have a lot more pressure and demanding of respect because they're stronger in that matchup. But like, if they're not creating their power spikes and you're in a situation where it's even, right? Like neither teams are winning or losing, you're winning. And like what I have said before, like with overheat, there are no birds up, but actually here, like with these birds, like if you see how fast usually you're able to rip them apart, right? Like maybe like time scales, right? and like I'm only level 5. But one interaction from overheat clears like the small bridge like pretty well. And you also
Time's up.
part objectives, right, with the overheat. And yeah, like that's honestly it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool pick, Expatriate Chandelure.
You lose.
And I think a lot of people, well, I shouldn't be upset, right? Because like people don't know better, honestly. But yeah, like, anyways, I will have a match played out of like a demonstration how Chandelure support Chandelure works. But yeah, thank you for watching, I guess.